because he didn't really have an opening bit for this. But hey guys, we are here. This is Too Fast, Too Movie. I'm Ben, and this is Jose.
Hello.
And we're back. This is not gonna be like our previous Too Fast.
I'm glad you mentioned it because I was totally gonna mention it.
I was thinking about that like every time. I'm just like, the last time we picked a show, it was My Hero.
Roughly almost a year ago.
I know. Nothing happened.
Well, nothing happened when we were doing it.
So it was, oh my god. Well, fortunately now we have a show with actual plot development to cover. That's going to be a deep cut for all the anime people that watch those 3 episodes. However, go ahead, drop a like and subscribe for this. And I guess let's just get into talking about the Legends of Vox Machina. So, Jose, I have some questions. I want to set the stage just for our audience a little bit.
All right.
You have not watched anything
of the first campaign.
Yeah, none of the first campaign. So you've seen a little bit of campaign 2, I think. Maybe?
Yes, I've seen maybe first 8-10 episodes. I know it's over 100. But...
So, and there's very little that you know essentially about the story that's going to be unfolding throughout campaign 1 and the entirety of Legends of Vox Machina then.
Right.
So one of the interesting things here with this whole thing is a lot of people did not really know what the tone of the show was going to be going in. Like over the last couple weeks, this has taken a much more high profile case within YouTube and the world of entertainment thanks to the trailer that was recently put out. What were you expecting versus what did you get going into this?
So what I was expecting was probably closer to like a typical fantasy kind of like, show that we've had. I can't really name a lot because a lot of the ones have been a little graphic to be like not this sense of graphic, but like stuff that really people are uncomfortable talking about. Oh,
okay. So we're talking about like you're thinking like more like the isekai like sort of world of actually now that I think about it, a lot of fantasy animation has been isekais as of lately, so I'm glad we dodged that bullet.
But by the time the stuff started kicking in, which is not too long in the episode, but it felt like this is probably what I would have expected from the people of Critical Role to do, and I'm kind of glad it went to that because like a lot of like adult-ish shows, which I was thinking of them before, but the only one that comes to my mind now is BoJack Horseman. Yeah, it's like this one pretty much takes it up to the next level.
Yeah, so the animation studio that they went with for this, I thought was an interesting choice because it's the same people that are behind Big Mouth and other sort of adult animation. It's not an anime company. They didn't go like they have the ins with Funimation that they could have been able to do that. Like Travis and Laura, who for people that are completely unfamiliar, are the voice actors and players behind both Vex and Grog, which also, if you are still unfamiliar, they voiced both Colonel Mustang and Lust in Full Metal Alchemist, respectively.
Yeah, and while not an anime, I know they also voice Black Widow and Thor in the Avengers game.
Yeah, they usually come as a package. They're also a married couple for anyone that cares about that. How I gush over them all the time, but that is neither here nor there. The sort of interesting thing here, though, is like they had the ability to go with a anime style option and they had the ends, but instead they still went with this other studio, which a lot of people weren't expecting. However, it's kind of safe to say that they knocked it out of the park. There were a couple moments in the first episode where I thought the animation was a little not my favorite. However, like overall, I feel like a lot of the visuals here are actually done spectacularly well.
Right. I think I forgot if this is the same studio that did Invincible because I see like a lot of similarities with it. And I'm honestly very pleased with it.
I think it might be a similar art director. Yeah, so I know that the man who they brought in to do the character designs has a very long history with DC and has done, frankly, just a lot of the superhero designs that were
DC as well.
Yeah,
like I think Young Justice is close to it.
Yeah, no, he did Young Justice. Okay. It is the same person who did that. And overall, I think it like worked really well. One thing that you said when we were talking about earlier was that this felt a lot like a D&D game.
Right.
Okay. Did you mean that in a good way or in a bad way?
Definitely in a good way. So I'm going to put into perspective. So Abraham, he hosts a campaign for our little group of friends, outside of Scope. And the way we go about it, not even just with Abraham, but like any of us who DMs, goes pretty much exactly the same way you see in every single one of the episodes that are released so far.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things about this is like when I looked up the reviews for this. By the way, I was fully expecting it to be. I was not expecting the reviews to be what they are for this show. The reviews are overwhelmingly positive. I think it currently still has a 100 on Rotten Tomatoes on a critic review, which I was not anticipating because the humor is especially crude. There's a lot of dick jokes. There's a lot of poop jokes. It was like way more lowbrow than I was expecting. But then I remember the group that was playing at the table. And if you go back and you rewatch those live streams and you're like, why is the humor so crude? It's like, that's kind of the humor that just manifests itself at a D&D game. Because it's just a bunch of really stupid people making stupid jokes while also having to pretend to be these amazing characters. So there's always this cognitive dissonance, and I still don't quite know how I feel about how it translates to animation. That's one of my big things right now.
I mean, as a big fan of crude humor, I don't mind it. I like it. I think it's like one of those things because like when you picture a fantasy setting, you do not think of anything like this.
I never would assume that I would see someone like Gandalf make a dick joke. That's where I was.
Right, exactly. But then you put, of course, into perspective, Laura Bailey, Sam Riegel, like these people, like in Critical Role specifically.
Yeah.
It's like their niche.
Yeah. Oh my God, especially Sam. I think I now want to go into, before we start going over plot synopses, just for general bits, because I'm still getting your vibe on this, and for all of our new audience members, at least when this starts out, the most important thing to note about Critical Role is that the stories are really good, yes, and the plot is definitely going to be an important element here, but of course, the glue that ties it all together is the characters and the players that are embodying them. So there's a lot to keep track of for new people. So we're gonna go through. I didn't get his full name. Oh no. I'm gonna start with. So we have Keyleth, who is clearly. Clearly she's a druid. She's very awkward, very flat, very flowery.
But like, Keyleth is like the only one I know from original campaign because for being part of the cosplay community,
so many people do her.
Yep, all of them. Like Jenny D comes to mind as like one of the main ones I know that has done a very good one.
She's got a very good Vex as well.
Yeah, Vex, Jester.
Her
Critical Role campaigns. Cosplays are so good. All right,
we have Keyleth, who I think for anyone that has watched the original campaign, they did her some absolute justice. Then there, of course, is there's big old Grog, Strongjaw, and his lovingly adorable relationship to Pike Trickfoot.
So far, my favorite.
Really, it's
Ashley Johnson's characters are always great.
Ashley Johnson is like she has only recently started getting the absolute love that she deserves. She was always loved in the community, but now there's something about her where she just gets to shine a lot more than she used to. And a lot of that had to do with, there is an interesting element of adaptation here where Ashley Johnson is the one player that was never actually there for all of the campaign. Because she was constantly going back and forth between New York and...
yeah, because I know this happened in the beginning of campaign 2 as well.
Yeah, so she was constantly going back and forth between New York and LA. She was in New York for Blindsided, which is a popular show, and she plays one of the main characters, so she's constantly there. And then it was really only when COVID started that she was able to return to the game full time. And it's really only after that the audience really got to be like, I fucking love Ashley Johnson.
Yeah.
But before then, she was still a well-loved person. And then there's the twins, Vex and Vax. Do you know which one's which?
Yeah, I think. But I think Laura and Liam actually make a really good combo with them.
Oh my god. I don't quite know the backstory as to how they did the character concept. I think they came in at the same time, but I also, if I remember correctly, that might not make sense because I remember the story being that Laura wanted to join the D&D campaign because she saw how much fun Travis was having originally when they were together.
I can believe that.
And that's how she got involved. And I think she may have piggybacked off of Liam from that, but I don't quite know the timeline on that. Then of course there's Scandalin, our scandalous bard. It's very obvious what he did with that name there. Played by Sam Riegel. It absolutely steals the show at any given moment.
And honestly, if you ever need like an opinion or like a general idea of Sam's character, Scanlan is a good start.
Yeah, no, it's
a great start actually.
Scandalin is just Sam Riegel, which is a problem and a blessing at the same time.
It's funny because when I first saw the first episode,
yes,
I didn't see a character that I didn't hear Sam's voice or like couldn't tell which one was him.
Yeah,
so I was like, was Sam not part of it? And then they skipped to him, and then it's like, oh.
By the way, what a character introduction, and also what a tone-setting moment for the show when we finally get introduced to Scanlan's character. Because like, I wasn't expecting full nudity. We got full nudity. Also, we get like a shot that I'm not going to put on screen of Scanlan's balls at one point, which is just very, very cleverly done. Apparently, they're very smooth.
I think that's something I honestly kind of like about Amazon. They push the barriers.
Yeah, it's especially in adult animation.
Right. And let's not forget Percy, of course.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to... Okay, so so far, he's only been introduced as Percy. However, I do not know if they're going to be adapting this. However, it's a very fun bit for everyone to remember because this is just how he used to introduce his character all the time. And I think everyone who doesn't know deserves to know it. He does go by Percy DeRollo, but in actuality, he goes by Percival Frankenstein von Musil Kowalski DeRollo III.
Okay.
That is Percy's full name. And there were a couple moments within the first two episodes where I thought that he was actually a character that wasn't being done a lot of justice. He's kind of, especially in the first two episodes, he's very much on the back burner making commentary and kind of like, I can't believe I'm around these fucking people that are completely less than me. And clearly by the third episode, we're introduced to him having a much darker tone, which is also in line with the voice actor Talison's sort of MO with a lot of his characters. A lot of his characters have sort of this dark, edgy tone, and if they don't, there is still an undertone to them that kind of allows them to kind of take up a darker space within the campaign. Like a character that he's known for doing, who was the most wholesome character in any of the campaigns, drank tea that was made of dead people. Like, this man is a goth. So he did make probably the character with the edgiest backstory, but I think that for the most part is pulled off very well. And he's going to be really important because he's going to be the actual main character of this first season.
Yeah, I could tell that definitely from the
end of the
second
third
episode.
Yeah,
and then definitely, of course, all of three.
Yeah,
episode 3.
Episode 3 really solidifies that. So sort of going into that, there is one other for people that are new to Critical Role and Campaign 1 in particular. There is one sort of looming shadow over all this that I think is worth bringing up. There was an additional member of Vox Machina who was omitted, who was there at the beginning of the live stream. So there was an additional Dragonborn sorcerer named Tiberius Stormborn. He was played by the player character Orion Akaba. I hope I didn't butcher that last name. However, he did have to leave after essentially bringing what fans noticed were a lot of toxic behaviors to the actual set. Now, that being said, there are some things here that that original fans might remember that he was not entirely the only person guilty of. Namely, there was a major issue for all the spellcasters in the live stream that had to do with the fact that this game was not originally Dungeons and Dragons; it was originally Pathfinder.
Oh. And
when they brought it to Geek and Sundry for the live stream, they swapped to Dungeons and Dragons. So it's my understanding that for all the spellcasters, spellcasting was a lot more fluid in Pathfinder, and they were able to get away with a lot more, where anyone who plays Dungeons & Dragons 5th editions knows that spells are really rigid in what they can and cannot do. So in order to circumvent this, this is a person who did a lot of essentially very blatant metagaming to the point where everyone knew that he was looking at monster stats on screen, but there was also very outward problematic behavior towards a lot of the female members of the cast.
Oh, there's always one.
There's always one. There's always
any
one.
medium.
And it's interesting because originally, Critical Role has had a history of wanting to sort of maintain the legacy and sort of keep everything peaceful. However, at one point, for anyone that is interested in Adventures of Vox Machina before this went down, I would highly recommend checking out the Dark Horse comic book series, Legend Origins of Vox Machina, which is sort of those earlier pieces, and it's actually featured within the first book.
Okay.
Unfortunately, though, Orion decided that he didn't want them using the rights to the character anymore, which he has every right to do, and he was pulled out. So we actually, if that hadn't happened, there was a chance that there would have been a manifestation of this other character who still story-wise does become an important element to motivation for a lot of these characters and was still integral to the story originally. However, in the process of adaptation and removing that character, they're going to have to do at least a little bit of work around in the beginning. And I think so far they've already done that. But it is one of those things that when we're talking about Origins of Critical Role, I don't think it should be swept under the rug because it is a piece that happened that still does have a little bit of controversy to it.
Did not know anything about that, of course, at all.
It's I would say it is definitely more of a deep cut. You'd have to be a person who watched Campaign 1, and he actually is in the beginning of the Briarwood arc. So he would have been present for the entirety of the third episode and would have been a key player in the events that happened in the first and second. So with that, I guess let's just go into a brief breakdown of both of these episodes now that we've kind of jumped into who these characters are and everything that's going on for new viewers. So the first two episodes are titled The Terror of Amon. You got to it before I... Tal'Dorei. Oh, shit. Nope. No, that's a different place. Yes, we're going to take that again. No, we're not. I mean, I'm keeping this in the podcast. The Terror Tal'Dorei. And the basic plot of this is very, very simple. There are a couple character moments that are brought to shine. However, the plot goes like this. Vox Machina is enlisted to slay a mysterious beast that has been ravaging the land, only to find out that it is General Krieg of the Council of Amon as a blue dragon in disguise. So this special, a couple interesting things. First of all, this is the original thing that they wanted to make. They did not want to make the Briarwood arc originally. The idea here was that they started crowdfunding campaign
for a single
episode. And then it turned into 2 episodes and we're like, oh, we're going to be able to break it up into 2 parts. And then it turned, and then they made too much money off of it, and then we're like, we're gonna make a whole season television, and then Amazon bought it and greenlit them for an additional 12 episodes.
Man, Amazon's
really, and like honestly, Amazon's been doing again like really impressive stuff. I mean, we covered Invincible on this channel last year.
The Boys, very good show. This one we're doing, certain movie I'm going to talk about in another video.
you got another one coming up, and Amazon takes really interesting chances on properties that it thinks are going to turn out well, and I think they did a really good job with this one. Yeah. And especially like these first 2 episodes, the general consensus is that the pace is a little bit slow on this. How are you feeling watching this? Actually,
I can see it being a little bit slow. I feel like because we talked about this, and I'm pretty sure you'll bring it up in a moment, that episode 3 is pretty much a whole session.
Yes.
Yeah. So, while I definitely did feel like the pace was pretty much a typical D&D session for people who know what it feels like, I think the pace is going fairly well for the time being. I don't know about future episodes.
Yeah, we're gonna have to take a look. I was originally really concerned that this first season was gonna be 24 episodes because I couldn't see them pulling off the Briarwood arc in the speed that kind of slow of a speed. But the way that this first episode for me, I had extremely mixed feelings about. So I have a rule anytime I watch a television show that I can't judge based off of the pilot because pilots have it is so rare to find a television show that actually has a good pilot, because pilots just have so much work that they have to do as far as introducing world, introducing the cast.
Yeah.
And let's face it, this is a D&D group with seven players in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of characters to have to introduce. Yeah. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. And really, it's down to the point where the plot for these first 2 episodes is really simple. There is a red herring in Surfence who is... It looks like they have him as a dark elf, which I do find interesting because dark elves sort of have their own lore within both the world of Forgotten Realms and within Tal'Dorei.
Right.
So I thought it was interesting to have that choice. However, this is a character that we did not see in the original stream. But he seems to be Drow. He seems to be a dark elf. And we're given the belief based off of Vex's, the manifestation of her ability to sense dragons nearby. We're given the impression that he's somehow in league. Of course, this turns out to be a complete red herring, and if you go back, actually, you'll notice that every time that she's having this sort of migraine thing, General Krieg is also in the same shot.
Right, whether he's the dragon or in human form.
So this is another thing. So I thought that one of the interesting things here was that this show also has another thing that it has to jump, which is the Dungeons and Dragons magic system. And the fact that they need to sort of still have the mystique of Dungeons and Dragons without sort of like any sort of metagaming that we might do at the table or watching the stream.
Right.
So for me, watching it, I'm just like, oh yeah, Krieg's not Krieg. I was totally in belief that Finch was the blue dragon.
Right.
I did not think that it was General Krieg. I forgot that they do talk about it later in the campaign that it was General Krieg, and I just fucking forgot. But it had to do this, and I know that you already play Dungeons and Dragons, so you also know that ancient dragons can just be people.
Right.
I thought that it did a relatively good job setting that twist to still exist. However, I also kind of wonder if not enough work was done to really establish this.
I'm not too sure about what to think with that, because I feel like that's also like almost a staple of D&D.
Yeah.
Like, this twist will happen, and
like someone's going to turn out to be a dragon.
Not going to be in that as well.
Yeah, it's
that the misleading path to someone else. I don't know. Like, I think also because from what I read beforehand, that the first 2 episodes, of course, were its own little story, a little prequel-ish thing that they didn't probably want to go too much maybe into it, or...
Well, so this is actually an interesting thing. This becomes a major... They did the right thing by picking this story to adapt. Because the fact that this is greenlit for additional seasons, this is something that when they went into what is essentially going to be the second season of this show when we get it, and in the actual live stream, they actually went back to re-explore the events that happened here in the live stream before starting a new arc. Because it was a seed that Matt Mercer planted before the live stream for what was going to be a much more major event in the story going forward.
Okay.
So I will say, for people that are like, maybe I skipped the first 2 episodes, do not. There's actually some really important stuff in there. I'm not going to be going over it explicitly, though, because I do not want to give any spoiler hints for people that are not ready for them. However, if we are still covering this when season 2 comes out, I will gladly bring us back to go over those points.
Right.
The other thing that I was kind of curious about, and have a little bit of mixed feelings about, is how they explored specifically Pike's magic and healing magic. They have to do a really interesting thing here because they're still adapting Dungeons and Dragons, and for anyone who does not play Dungeons and Dragons again, at the level that they're at and how powerful they're supposed to be, they're supposed to easily be able to bring people back from the dead. And they did decide to completely omit that.
I think it makes sense in a way because, like,
there's no stakes, which I think is an important distinction. However, there's also, it seems that like even Pike, who has her who uses her healing magic and pulls from the Everlight, she doesn't quite know what's going to happen every time she uses her powers.
Right. For a quick question, because like I said, I'm not too familiar. Pike is what, a priest or priestess?
Pike's class would be a cleric.
Cleric.
Yeah. So, Pike's class would be a cleric. For anyone, if you really want to get into it, she's specifically she's a war domain cleric.
Okay.
Oh man, I get to talk about Dungeons and Dragons on this fucking show now. Hell yeah. She is a war cleric, which means that she has some more offensive abilities, but she also has everything that clerics have, which of course is healing magic, holy magic. She is supposed to be able to deal with the undead very well because of this holy side of her. Mm-hmm. However, I think we're going to be exploring this a little bit. There's going to be some stuff about her god that I think we're going to be exploring a little bit later. Yeah. In particular, because at the end of the next episode, her holy symbol does break, and I think that we're going to be seeing a character line having to do with that soon. Right. So there's a bunch of things that can mean, and I think we're very good for speculation on all those fronts. I think with that though, these episodes are this episode's pretty much consolidated. Plot's very simple for these two. Eventually they do overtake General Krieg on their second attempt, and it's really only through wits and being really smart, which I want to say one thing. That would never happen in Dungeons & Dragons campaign. That would never fucking happen.
Can't confirm.
The idea of someone pulling off that kind of an illusion as a distraction and then it going that well from that point forward, it would be too much planning. It would be in the middle of a fight, and none of the players would ever be able to keep up with each other on that kind of level. Do I think that they did a really good job of not making them seem too powerful, though, and having to use their brains in order to defeat this enemy? Yes. And I think that in this episode, that is the thing that this really excels at.
Yeah, I think so, because like the first, I will consider the first two episodes almost like a one-shot for D&D. Yeah. And most people, I'm pretty sure, would know what a one-shot is, especially watching Critical Role with their various one-shots every now and then. And while the plan that they had was definitely, like you said, something that wouldn't happen in a normal D&D session, I think it was executed really well. And like, as someone who currently plays like a mage with like Grand Illusion or whatever it's called, like Scanlan's plan thing worked really well. And
the whole greater illusion for an entire party to fight. And I mean, you could do something like that in Dungeons and Dragons. It's not impossible, but the odds of you actually pulling that off in a dragon's lair, hoof. I think now with that gushing, I think the main takeaway from those first two episodes is just they did a fantastic job, not just adapting the campaign to the actual visual medium, but also Dungeons and Dragons as a whole and the way that its gameplay can reflect in actual storytelling.
Yeah, because Dungeons and Dragons, like, aside from, of course, the setting of it, you can make so many different kinds of stories from it. And that's one thing I love about Dungeons and Dragons, like, as a whole, because you can, like, be as creative as you can get with it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that, like, for me is just, like, this is also just an excellent model for sort of translating essentially how sort of spells and your attacks manifest. And, like, another thing is, like, when you're watching at the table, it's just, like, Grog is made of hit points. He's supposed to be able to take any hit, and we see very clearly that that's just not the case in this show. He will be badly hurt if, like, he gets opened up or takes a direct hit. Like, he gets knocked out by Krieg in the first shot. Like, they do a great job sort of establishing, like, hit points are not necessarily your physical health. They are abstract. The way that your attacks hit something and do damage are abstract. The way that your spells manifest are abstract. And I feel like the way that that just gets translated is actually just really good.
Yeah, I love seeing, like, all different kinds of, like, magic things work, because one show that besides from what people think of it, Goblin Slayer, the way, like, they go about, like, magic and, like, casting spells on it, I really like a lot, because, like, that gives you, like, the whole fantasy game feeling.
Yeah. There's a and I mean isekais have it kind of gone into sort of the soft magic fantasy game world for a while, and this so far is a soft magic system. We haven't seen any clear-cut rules. That is something that they will need to address later in order for shit to work, though, because there's going to be a lot of points in the story in the future where conflict does get resolved because of magic. And they need to be able to obey the 3 laws of magic in order to do so successfully.
Right.
Now, that being said, let's go on into the official beginning of the Briarwood arc with a Feast for Realms. So, this episode encapsulates the arrival of the Briarwoods for a security meeting for Tal'Dorei after the recent dragon fiasco. Only we discover that they were the murderers and usurpers of Percy's family, the Dorollos, who had previously ruled over the province of Whitestone. Vax tries to snoop into the Briarwoods' hold to find information and stumbles upon a tome naming the Whispered One. The Briarwoods catch Vax in the act and almost kill him, revealing at least Silas to be a vampire. However, fortunately, after jumping out a window and getting the absolute shit kicked out of him, he is saved by Vox Machina, who just barely managed to get out of it with all of their lives. After Keyleth unfortunately supplies an escape route for the Briarwoods, they manage to get away. However, they leave behind their stagecoach, Desmond, who Percival proceedingly puts on a very spooky mask, gets a spooky shadow, and it gets a spooky voice, says that his soul is forfeit, and blows off his fucking hand. Vox Machina is then promptly arrested by the establishment here, as you would if you were attacking nobles. Okay, so generally speaking, what were your first thoughts on all of this? Where were you expecting things to go? What were you expecting the Briarwoods to be? What's going on in your head? Because I know everything.
Well, in my head, at this point I was just watching it like as a show, not much of it as like a D&D campaign.
Yeah.
So like the ending of it being as it was, very much a hit on the D&D point.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really sure what to think of like the whole like plot line of like how it went so far. But like one person staying behind to cause a distraction, and then other person to sneak away.
Oh,
and,
I
like,
didn't even mention the Scanlan song.
Also, Sam Riegel just singing.
Oh, phenomenal,
so
phenomenal.
But yeah, I really liked it, and I think it hit the tone really well with what it wanted to do.
Yeah, the as far as the Briarwoods and their introduction, so before all of this, we get a brief introduction of Silas, absolutely decimating a group of muggers who thought that they were going to easily be able to deal with some royalty. What did you even think that the Briarwoods were going into this?
I had a very small vibe of them being not good. And because like when I was first watching it, I wanted to know like who the person was. So like, thankfully with Amazon, you when you pause, it tells you the art, to the voice actor. And for Mrs. I forgot her first name.
Delilah.
Yeah, Delilah. The first when I first paused for that.
Double check that, but go
on.
Yeah.
But when I first paused for seeing Delilah, and I saw Greg Griffin, very amazing voice actress, by the way.
Yes.
I was first a little bit stunned because I forgot that this cast has so many voice actors too.
Yeah, we haven't even gone if you haven't, just because we do not have the time to go over the sheer talent that exists within this. It is all of the big voice actors, and it is all of the big fantasy actors.
Yeah, like very quick mentions, of course, Carrie Payne, Greg Griffin, Felicia Day.
Yeah.
Not to mention just the entire original cast of Critical Role.
The entire original cast of Critical Role. David Tennant.
Right.
David Tennant did our Blue Dragon and General Krieg. It's like the amount of talent. Honestly, I'm pretty sure most of the budget just went to talent for this and not animation. But. Yeah, there's some pretty big names in this. I have so much more I could geek out, but I have to stay on task.
Right. So last mention of the Briarwoods I'll say was when Silas kicked everybody's ass, it was really good.
Yeah, were you did you see the vampire bit coming at all?
I should have, because in this Discord they were talking about not the whole episode, but just like what it featured.
Yeah.
So like with basically fantasy setting, that someone mentioned vampires. It slipped my mind completely, and then by the time I was like, oh, he's the vampire.
He's the vampire. It's and what do you think Delilah is?
If I had to guess, I would probably say something close to like a warlock or some sort, but
okay.
Because my first thought was that they were both vampires, but then I saw the way her powers were, and I was like, something's
a little off with her. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the closest thing I can say that she probably would be was like close to a warlock.
Gotcha. I will be holding all of this information close to my chest. The other interesting element here is there's one, because Vax didn't actually find out much. He goes in and he's kind of snooping through their things, and he comes across a secret compartment in their carrying case that has this tome, vials of blood, and some other general look like heebie-jeebie magic stuff. And the only thing that he really got was the mention of this
the Whispered One
deity called the Whispered One. I don't know if so for people that do know Dungeons and Dragons really well, that is something that does exist within the Forgotten Realms lore.
Yeah, that I can imagine.
So I have do you know the answer to that, or are you able to speculate?
For speculation purposes, because I'm not too familiar.
Okay.
I would say close to like, I forgot if they're called like an old god in D&D or not, or just
they would be. Yeah, they would be great. Yeah, they would be great. Great old ones are still used.
Right.
They borrow from Lovecraft very heavily for that kind of thing. So you're thinking more of a great old one type deity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So like probably that playing into how Delilah has her powers then,
right?
Along with the warlock comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. It is. I was very pleased with a lot of this. And for people that are watching that knows how all this stuff goes down and have seen the original campaign, it is very pleasantly clear that they are playing the long game with the show, which is a very good sign. Right. So the Whispered One, we'll have to stick around. We'll probably get some more answers throughout the season, but we also might not. There's going to be a lot of different things. The last major point that I think is worth going over is the element of Percy's mask and that sort of unbridled rage and turning into something else. This is something that a lot of there was only mild foreshadowing, and this is something that also in this moment in the live stream took everyone by surprise, because no one was expecting this, and not even the players at the table were expecting anything like this to happen.
Yeah, I was very much surprised when I first saw that happen.
It was this whole fight outside to save Vax's life. It happens pretty much exactly as it went down. The only thing that was missing, that I'm glad they didn't do, because it is there was a spell called Feeble Mind in Dungeons and Dragons, for people who do not know or have not experienced, it is a spell that can be a little bit problematic for what it can do roleplay wise. It basically makes your character's intelligence and wisdom 1. And you cannot cast spells or talk coherently. So what it results in, unfortunately, is a lot of players kind of playing into very ableist tropes of disabled people. That did not necessarily happen in the original version. It happened to the Dragonborn character that I mentioned previously,
right?
Who thankfully just got to play as a dumb lizard. So it kind of worked in that context. However, I'm glad that it wasn't adapted here, just because of the problematic point of having to have a character sort of be stupid as a spell. It did kind of set some of the tone, but going from that moment into Percy's moment with this guy Desmond. As for you, this entire moment where it clearly caught you off guard, what do you think is going on?
Ooh, I
'Cause I'm not allowed to say anything. I'm in Abraham's role now. I can't say anything.
It's really hard for me to even come up with like an idea for this, honestly, because I remember like the small little shadows I think that I like came around him
Yeah.
around them. So I don't know if it's like a lingering spell from one of the Briarwoods or something deep down in Percy or something. I feel like it could go like almost any way.
Yeah, there's it's interesting because there's a lot of things about Percy that and again I said this at the top of the show. I felt like they weren't doing him a ton of justice because there is a lot of mystique and mystery to this character, and there's a couple things that they omitted as foreshadowing that could have been done, that could have assisted in this moment a lot, and a lot of it got kind of pigeonholed into this episode. We see the mask on the wall, and we see the flashbacks of when he was running away, and we only sort of know him as this boy genius type. There's this is difficult because I can't spoil anything on air. There will be more, and this will play directly into his character. I'm really hoping that they are going to give him the time to shine and fully flesh him out. My biggest bone to pick with this episode is that we did not get enough of his life before the Briarwoods came in. Because we currently do not have any emotional attachment to what Percy went through. We just understand what he went through.
Right.
Which I'm hoping that they're going to flesh out more. I do think that it's something that they do need to do in order for this season to go successfully. Because right now, the reviews are very high, but unfortunately, I could see the show dipping downhill if they do not give it character motivations the right amount of time to flourish and frankly enough character driven plot.
Yeah,
currently it feels like it's a lot of plot for plot.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like one of the sad points because like a lot of shows, like not even just with like animation, like shows in general, they'll have a very strong start and then like immediately dip down and then we'll only like get back when it's close to the end. And that's honestly very upsetting.
I'm really hoping that we do not see that happen. However, unfortunately, this show is not perfect, and I've immediately noticed plenty of moments that for me came up as red flags with the writing. Namely, the big one for me is if we're going back to episodes 1 and 2, the beats that Keyleth had for character development of realizing that she was out of her depths and hesitating on the battlefield. All those beats were kind of like really rushed in and not fleshed out, and we haven't really learned a ton about Keyleth's character in those moments. We know that she hesitates, but we don't know why she hesitates. We don't know exactly what is the reason for her to be like this, because from our perspective as the audience, she's in an adventuring party. Right. And clearly they've seen some shit before this. Grog chops off a dude's hand, like in the opening. She's been around violence, so why can't she be able to why can't she handle being in this scary of a fight?
Yeah, I think it's partially of like the like player mindset of the character is like in a way playing into it. And also I think it's also just because like a druid, like I think in a fantasy setting is not like much of like a big fighter, and like with a giant dragon breathing lightning all around and everything.
There's reasons for it. I'd agree. I think my thing is the lack of understanding Keyleth's story and sort of Keyleth's character development and why she's doing this. Because one of the reasons why I am excited for this show is a lot of these characters have really great backstories and they're fully realized by the end of all of this. And Keyleth is one of those people that, in my opinion, has one of the stronger. She has one of the stronger hero's journeys of everyone in the group. That being said, I'm not seeing a ton to suggest that will be supported in the writing right now, and I really hope that as they take their time going through the Briarwood arc for this season, that they're going to actually let these characters like fully bloom so that we can come to understand them at the same depths that we understood them as players at a table.
Yeah, I think especially with a show like based on D&D and like a many characters as a main character, every now and then touching on someone's backstory. is really good. Because you don't want to have like, one main focus and then the next one, and just back and forth, and definitely not dump all of it at once. Because like the first 2 episodes was mostly Vex and Vax, and their backstory, and partially of it.
I wish that there was actually more focus on them. Like I don't think we needed those beats with Keyleth. I think we needed more Vex and Vax beats. Part of me hopes that at some point they will almost use the Lost method of flashing back mid-episode in order to go over some of these backstories that are important, instead of having it being something that the characters are telling the other characters. Because as much as Percival's, as much as what happened with Percival, like, kind of unfolds as, like, they killed my parents, this, and you can see that the entirety of Vox Machina gets behind him in that moment, and that's how it goes down in the game as well. Part of the intrigue for theater of mind at a table is the fact that your mind's filling in those blanks, and you do not do that with television. And in order to appropriately be able to translate that, part of me wishes that we just spent a little bit more time in like did it as like an A plot and B plot of like what happened back then. Like if we were able to actually meet the people that were in Percy's family before just finding out that they were all violently killed, and that way we can feel his pain. Because to me, what that moment does, unfortunately, is it does what I hated about Demon Slayer, which is Demon Slayer opens up with a family that you barely meet and then kills them off immediately and expects you to feel horribly sad about it.
Right.
And because you don't have time to know those people, you don't get to understand and empathize with that character truly.
Yeah, I think I think piggybacking on a bit of the flashbacks a little bit, like if they do it for like the beginning of each episode, I think that would tie in really well and help. Yeah, help a lot.
I think it's going to be necessary. Fortunately for us, a lot of the plot that's going to be happening this season, at least, is going to be focusing on Percy. So they are going to have a nice clean focus in order to be able to do this story right. However, when they start going into their second season, which they're clearly already greenlit for, this is going to become more of a thing that they need to balance.
Yeah, I think it would be like the first season mostly focused on this character, hints with a few others.
Yeah.
And then by the time, I think also just because like to make sure like the show does well, it'll balance out evenly among the other characters.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly the Critical Role wants this to do well. Their company has grown drastically since this Kickstarter.
Right. I
believe they're at 30 employees. There was the whole debacle like 2 or 3 months ago where people were like, what do you mean they make the most money on Twitch? And it was like, yeah, they make the most money on Twitch. This is a big company that has to still maintain a small company vibe.
Right. And not to mention, of course, the huge fan base of supporting it.
Yeah.
Like sometime forever ago during campaign 2, me and some friends actually went to New York to see them play live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
you were there for that episode?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay.
So there was one room was full, of course.
Yeah.
Met a bunch of screams, bunch of cosplayers, bunch of Mighty Nine supporters with shirts.
Yeah.
It was an amazing experience too.
For me, this very much illustrates Critical Role is officially at the stage Rooster Teeth was 10 years ago.
Yeah, like in their prime, basically.
Yeah. So the real big tricky thing is, will Critical Role stay like this, or is it going to go down the road that Rooster Teeth did? And that is a scary thought.
That is a scary thought, because not only do I just not see a lot of like Rooster Teeth content, like, well, besides from being subscribed to a bunch of channels, personally my channel, Rooster Teeth, like, they have a whole variety of content as well, and I think mostly like with their shows, I wouldn't say like beyond downward, but like it's like easily gets phased out.
Yeah,
I think Critical Role will probably still have a good while, because one, the fan base is still there for it, and it's like almost booming, especially with this show now.
This show and Campaign 3 is in a really good stride right now. I'm hoping it's one. There's a couple things on that. It is really going to be on the Critical Role team and cast to make sure that it stays like this, and it's also going to be on the fans to not fuck it up for new people coming in.
Yeah, that's also a very scary thought.
And there have been toxic elements in the Critical Role fan base as it has gotten bigger, especially for people that are aware of when Campaign 3 started. There were a lot of people that were really mad that player characters didn't choose the characters that they thought they were, or were using characters that we had already kind of seen before, either in one-shots or in Exandria Unlimited, which was a small series that they did right before Campaign 3.
Yeah.
So,
personally, I like that, but that's me, and that's
it's I loved it as well, but there's plenty of voices that can kind of muck this up. And the crazy thing is that the show has a 100 on Rotten Tomatoes. We are covering it on this channel not just because like I'm a big fan of Critical Role and we're
D&D fan,
and D&D fan, but also because guess what? If you subscribe to people that cover animation and movies in general, you're going to be seeing a lot of Critical Role coming up in the recent months because this is not going away anytime soon.
Much agreed, yeah.
So with that, we're going to keep an eye on it, and we'll be here to break it down in all different sort of ways. So thank you so much for dropping by. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you did. And of course, we have other content on the channel that you guys are free to check out, including some tabletop stuff that we do around here.
Funny that you had a video that said Call of Cthulhu is better than D&D.
I did have a video saying that Call of Cthulhu... it's 5 reasons Call of Cthulhu is better.
You're right, my bad.
Not that Call of Cthulhu is better. Well, actually, that's a little bit of a... There's some mix and match. Go watch that video. It's going to be in this corner. And yeah, drop by, see what you like, and stick around. We'll be here for a while. I'm Ben. That's Jose.
Yep.
And we'll see you next time.